We can do a little balancing breath exercise if you want.
Of course.
Would you like to do that right now? Okay. All right, let's close our eyes. Just put your hands, palms down on your thighs. If your palms are facing up, you're receiving descending consciousness from our atmosphere and from our spirit. If you have it
Mhm.
with your palms facing on your legs, it's grounding. So I think we just want to do some grounding right now because oftentimes when we're feeling like a little wired, we're taking in a lot from above. So we'll just work on grounding now and just take a deep breath in. And with that deep breath out, let it really all empty until everything gets out. Contract your abdomen and take another breath in and let that out. You can let it through your mouth like, ah. You can make a noise if you want. Now take 5 more of these deep breaths on your own. And with each one, feel something else relax in your body. Start with your shoulders. Maybe bring your chin to your chest. And feel that energy cascade through your body, off of your body, down through your feet. And then just bring some normal breathing when you're ready, just with a closed mouth and inhale and exhale. When you'll just feel yourself getting more and more relaxed, more present, more kindness and compassion to self. You're here exactly where you should be in this moment. And now feel the earth is supporting you. Feel all of that extra energy that you've been experiencing today wash off of your body like rain falling down and being absorbed by the earth. Feel your feet drawing roots, red roots into the earth, and feel those go deeper into until they reach Middle Earth, the center of the earth. Feel yourself be supremely grounded and rooted and supported. Breath move and roll through you and slowly feel those roots. Know those energetic roots are always there and just bring yourself back to your body. Sitting in this chair and know you are in a completely different space from the space you were when we just entered it. Feel free to open your eyes when you're ready and come back in for a little chat with Heather and Abby.
Heather, what is the pink bubble?
All right. So, a woman by the name of Shakti Gawan, I believe I'm pronouncing her last name right, wrote a book many years ago called Creative Visualization. And in that, this is one of my first forays into learning and reading about other people. I always had a big imagination and found myself self meditating from a young age. But has a number of different meditations in the chapters in this book. One's called the Pink Bubble. And the pink bubble is where you take something within the future, a year, 3 years, 5 years, and you create a moment in a day of your life in that future place. So I've done them with 3 year and 5 year. I don't do them very often. I do them to release momentary things, but the big pink bubble I think we're referring to is the manifesting of some future destiny for you. So you put in a moment in the day of that place. Let's say it's 5 years is where you want it to be. And then you imagine yourself moving through that moment as a normal day. And you bring in the structure that you're in or the space that you're in. And maybe you're in a house, maybe you're out on a hike, wherever it is, and you put in all the details and all the color and all the sounds and all the smells and all the feels of that moment 5 years in the future. And if there's people that are in that environment with you, a specific person, or you're planning on having children and they're in that world, a specific career advancement in a place, maybe you're at a desk in a university and you have a student knocking on the door and you picture what that office smells like, what that feels like, and that you embody that moment. So once you get that all set, you're very excited and you always feel like, this feels really good because it's what you want. And so then you put this pink bubble around you and it's translucent to a sense. So within that world that you just painted, that's floating inside of this bubble. And you're not really paying too much attention about it other than the fact that now you've taken this and you've moved it into a new space and one that floats. And then you step out of that bubble with your future experience inside of that bubble, all of the sights and the sounds and the smells and the feels. And then with your inhale, you breathe into that feeling of being in that space and that place. And your exhale, you start to push that pink bubble out and away from you. And with each inhale, you feel the feels. And then with each exhale, you let that pink bubble float further and further away from you. And this is hard. At least it's hard for me, because you want whatever you want, you realize is getting further away from you. But you also then have to say to yourself, but this is a future event. So this is going to be in front of me. And then you do it until you finally see that pink bubble disappear. And then what you've done is you've placed a manifestation to the universe in the frequency that matches the frequency that you have for what you want in that future, for that future version of yourself. And then the universe receives it to the quantum field, receives that frequency, that vibration, and it works to create that for you. So all along, year from the point of when you sent that pink bubble out, or 2 years, you might have forgotten that you've done that pink bubble. But all of the work that's being done by the quantum field, by spirit, by the frequency matching, is guiding you to that final space. And now, that said, we have free will and different things can happen to us, but it will show up in some way, shape, or form that might be a little unrecognizable to what that moment was, but it will have all of the parts that you manifested. For me, I've done it 3 times, and every time it has given me what I've asked for, to a version of myself where I was raising my children, and there was 2 children, and they were 2 girls. I didn't know. I just could tell that I just saw their body, their feet and their legs moving in the living room while I was in the kitchen cooking in a space, in a lovely home. And I knew that they were of a feminine energy, and there was a lot of extra things I had to go through to have those children, and odds were against me. But all along, I had complete confidence and a knowingness that this would be happening, not really placing it to my pink bubble experience. Do you have any questions from that?
A few actually.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is to the concept itself. So you said or while creating this visualization, it's often 3 or 5 years ahead. Is there a possibility that the vision I have is too big for the bubble? So how is the balance between reality and the true dream I have? So should I maybe have a little bit of a negotiation with myself, or should I focus more on the realistic thing or the dream thing?
I think I'm a stickler for words, and I'm working on not saying the word should myself, because it feels like it's a forced thing. It's almost punitive, like it's almost as if I'm bad because I didn't think of it. So I would say it would be in your highest interest instead of you should. It would be in your highest interest to put your dream out there, because if you put your big dream out there, then even if you fall short of that big dream, or it doesn't look exactly down to the T of you sitting in a cabin in the middle of a national forest in the United States writing your big book or whatever that dream is, you're going to hit something close to that. And perhaps even that. Because again, think, though, you want the vibration to match your excitement and your passion. What is your highest excitement? And what is your that will show you what your passion is. So when your big dream and you're manifesting it comes from this place of pure joy and happiness and desire, it's your dream and it fuels you up, that is what is going to drive. That is the frequency, that high frequency, that is going to drive your path towards it. If you make it more realistic, it's going to be just more pedestrian and more and less inspiring, I think, than what your dream is. So you want it to be your dream, even if you think it's unachievable. Well, you want to believe it's achievable when you put it in the pink bubble. You have to believe it's achievable, because otherwise you can't manifest from a place of lack. It just you're then manifesting from a lower vibration, and so it's an energy that we're dealing with, right? And so it has to read the right energy. So you're sending out an energetic template of what you want. It gets captured, and then from everything I've heard, you don't need to keep doing it. Like, you don't need to manifest every day, and you wouldn't manifest every day your pink bubble, because you send that out to release it. But as we're learning more about the power of manifesting and the quantum field and our physics and science that we have always known is changing, we're realizing that we don't need to manifest that thing every day. We just need to be true about the energy and the frequency of which we send it out to. And then just have trust that that's been sent from a place in your heart, a pure place, and that will come back to you. So then patience needs to come in, right?
Yes. Interesting, very interesting. But while you were saying these things, thought about the visions I had in the past. And it's funny how my whole vision changed a lot over the years. So when I was 18, 17, 18, I had a totally different vision than I have right now. So how do I deal with that? What if I send out the pink bubble when I was 17, but throughout the process I myself, as I got more self-aware, self-conscious, that this isn't something I truly want, and now I want this, but I already sent out the pink bubble. So how would I deal with that?
Well, the way that I would see it happening is that like I said initially, it might not look exactly like you sent it out as initially, but what you might have put in that pink bubble is a sense of peace, a sense of that there's a true thread between what you initially thought and what you sent out and what you're thinking now. Like your essence was put into the making of that pink bubble, right? And so that the result of that pink bubble might be coming from a more mature version of yourself. And I don't necessarily think it would be a bad idea if you put a pink bubble out a year ago, if you sent another pink bubble out with some updates, right? Like if this was me, because I think this is fluid too, right? If this was me and I was in your situation, I would say, I've put your pink bubble. Remember to the best you can the pink bubble that you had. Create that scene of you in that pink bubble, and then update it. Give it some updated version of the new path with kindness and compassion to the person that made that pink bubble before, but have this frequency and energy of your true passion. And my guess is that the true frequency and passion of what you sent out in the pink bubble, when was this, a year ago or 2 years ago? A year ago.
I haven't done it back then,
You haven't done it. Okay.
but what if I had
What
done
if,
it?
yes, if you did, then I would think that if you really have the right mindset, if you've really understood the pink bubble and you sent something out from your truest heart, from your highest interests and passion, then that's going to come back to you in a way that is more contemporary to what you're feeling at the time. That makes sense? So you could make the bubble again, but I think also the bubble would be reflecting your container of energy, and it will come back to you in a way that fits like a key to your heart. That's how I see it.
Very interesting concept. And there's one more question about the concept itself, which would be how I can actually define my vision in a detail that I can create a pink bubble. So let's just say, instead of saying my dream is to one day live in a mansion, so this is like my very broad dream when I was 17, but this very broad dream now became more and more like focused on something like a wooden mansion up in a national park in America, while birds flying around, and there's a nearby lake in my backyard, and I go fish, or I'm fishing every single day. So how can I actually, or what type of question should I ask myself to discover a more detailed vision?
That seems like a very detailed vision to me. But what I would suggest doing is be like, okay, what does my desk look like at the cabin that I'm in? And is there a candle? Is there an incense? Do I have maybe a soup on the stove I'm cooking? Is there another voice that is calling me that opens the door and says, hello, honey, I'm home? Are you walking to the cabin with a string of fish that you caught? And is the outside of your cabin have a fire pit that maybe you smoke the fish on? What kind of sounds inside are going on? Do you have some music playing? Do you have, what does the kitchen look like? What does the living room look like? What does your view look like from the seat that you're sitting in? If you get up and stand, and you're walking, what does that space feel like when you're walking in it? Does it feel comforting and cozy, or is it expansive and creative? So those kind of details.
Mhm.
Like, and you're having the best day of your life, right? Like, this is when you are feeling on top of your game. And so it's really important to move into this pink bubble experience from a very grounded, peaceful, you've been meditating, like a long meditation, or you've exercised, you're feeling relaxed, you're in your happy place in your home or wherever that is, if it's outside, but you're in a place where, and you don't want to be distracted by this. You want to find that there's a moment where you have the time and the space to be able to do this in silence without distraction. Did that answer your
Mhm.
question, Avi?
Yes.
Okay.
So it seems like that I should truly immerse myself in the situation I'm thinking about and I'm
Yep.
trying to visualize.
If you have art that you'd like to have on the wall, if there's a fire going in the fireplace, you smell that. If there's a pen that you're writing with and you can smell the pen or a pencil and you can smell the pencil shavings, like really very integrated into your experience. And I think part of it is the message that you're sending out to the universe is this is who I am. This is my vibration signature for this moment. And it might not look like, for instance, when I did my pink bubble, there was a lot of obstacles to make that happen. And the one thing that wasn't the same was I was in a mountain environment. My home was in a mountain environment and I was in the mountains. When I made my first pink bubble, I lived in the mountains in Germany. And so, but I was in Phoenix. Well, I was in Minnesota actually when I realized that the pink bubble had manifested itself in the middle of St. Paul, Minnesota, not in the mountains. So, but the most important parts came true.
Mm-hmm.
That was my passion and my highest interests, right? So, and my home was very cozy and beautiful. And, and I had my gardens around me and I had the things that were important, but it wasn't in the mountains. So it's not going to be exact,
Mm-hmm. Once again, such an interesting
isn't it?
thing. Yes, it's very interesting and something I will definitely think a lot more in the future. I have a book that I'm reading that is about visualization from, what's the guy's name? Maxwell Maltz.
Okay.
And yeah, he talks a lot about it, gives a few examples of how visualization changed a person or a group of people in a way that is similar to, or he gave the example between basketball players thinking or visualizing them throwing a free throw and then a group that actually threw the free throws, and lastly a group that haven't threw any ball, that they haven't trained. And at the end, the two groups, so the group who visualized it and the group who actually threw the ball, both had similar scores at the end, which just showed how effective visualization in itself is. And same with golf. So there's famous training in golf where you visualize the shot, you do the shot, and afterwards you look at the ball. This is something a dear friend of mine told me. So yeah, I think that visualization in any shape or form, especially the one you shared, is absolutely powerful. And since you said you had 3 incidents where it happened, and I think that every or each one of those turned out to be in your favor and how you wanted it to be, even if some of the details weren't there, but at the end of the day, it worked out for you, and now you sit here with me on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
They have studies that have proven that the mind cannot differentiate between an experience that is happening in real time and one that you're imagining. So that is incredibly powerful information to have for when you're wanting to train to do something, but also to recognize how that can keep you pulled under and down. Because when you start negative looping thoughts, you're thinking that, and your body is thinking, and your ego is thinking this is happening in real time. So your cortisone spikes. You get very, you get mucked up by the negative hormones that run through your body. Your parasympathetic nervous system starts to go to sleep, and your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, starts to rise up. So, and it's all just because of a thought. So that is to catch the thought is one of the biggest things. And when you catch the thought, we all have them, the faster and quicker you can catch it, the more you can stop the reaction. You breathe into that meditation. So Joe Dispenza says, we basically, our reactions are our personality. So as soon as we go like this because something startles us, we've reacted before we even know. So there's the reaction. Then there's the hormone, there's the communication. Then there's the hormones that come through our bodies. And then there's the action. And so we do it so frequently that we don't even really react anymore. It's just so subtle, but it's putting out all of our hormone messages every single day, and it's creating our personality. So when you start to recognize and catch yourself having a weird reaction or looping or saying should, right? Like that's a good one. You're going to probably be really irritated with me that I said that, because now you're going to be like, oh, I just said should again. Because I do that. You catch yourself, it'd be in my highest interest to not say should. You start to change your personality. You start to change who you are. And so the other piece to that is to really slowing down before you speak and just giving yourself time to be able to reflect on what just triggered me. And do I need that trigger in my life? What is the source of that trigger? How much of a wormhole can I go down while staying present and not getting sucked into that negative loop, so I can find the path? And they call it neuro pruning. The less you go down that path, the more that neuron withers and is pruned. And then the positive behavior that replaces it, maybe just stillness and peace and calmness, as opposed to the reaction, that becomes a reaction. And that becomes hardwired in you. And so it's that neural plasticity and that new neural programming and wiring that's happening in you. I think that, to your point, visualization is twofold. It's so powerful when it's used in a productive, positive way under the right frequency. And it's super destructive when you're using it from a place of a negative, low vibration.
And now connecting that to my next question, what exactly does frequency and vibration mean? So you mentioned both words a lot, but could you maybe define it, or maybe even give an example of a high frequency and a low frequency inside someone?
So I'm going to look it up because I always get it. It's like the Schumann's resonance. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so the Schumann's it's a natural electromagnetic wave. So all these things are resonances of light wave frequencies, lightweight wave energy patterns, which is how really our bodies are all electrically magnetic. Right? Like the heart is 5,000 times stronger in its electrical magnetical current than the brain. So it's just, and so we're really moving from our heart space. The Schumann's resonance, Dr. realized that the earth and tested it has a frequency. And so the frequency of the Schumann's resonance is 7.83 hertz. Then everything else on earth has that same frequency. Everything live has that frequency. The human body, the trees, the oceans, anything that exists on earth. And that resonance is stabilized too by all of these, 5,000 lightning strikes a minute or something that we have on earth. And so it's continually charged. This pulls into grounding. But it's all, but the human frequency in balance, I should say, vibrates at the Schumann's resonance. And that's just the name of the person that discovered it. But we can go between 5 hertz and 10 hertz. Different body parts have their own frequencies, and different times of our life we can have different frequencies. But an optimal type of frequency for Earth is to be in balance and in harmony, and to have that same frequency as Earth, or Gaia, as she is called by many, and it is a feminine entity, I suppose we could call it. So yeah, so this is where telepathy comes from, right? There's the telepathy tapes are now one of the most seen podcasts in the world. And it's about autistic children communicating with their mothers who are in different rooms, and they know what page they're on with the book, and they're just communicating telepathically. This is documented in numerous videos on the telepathy tapes, but that is a matched frequency. you can't be telepathic with somebody that isn't in the same vibration as you, that doesn't have that same wavelength going. That's a direct, when you think of somebody and they call. So does that help? I'm certainly not a geologist or a physicist, but the basics make sense to me. I mean, we have a aura, right? We have scientific, this has been around for like 30 years or something like that. A long time we've had this scientific device that can read and see the colors of our aura and how far it extends. They're now finding that it can go 50 feet in either direction of us, is where we can test our energetic field. Well, think about that. Think about an arena full of 50,000 people, and each body can go 50 feet in either direction. So think about that common, that universal consciousness that's happening in that arena with all those overlapping shared energy fields.
Yes.
A powerful meditation that I would teach in my yoga classes is imagine you are like, you're laying there after class in Shavasana, and I guide people to imagine that they have a glass, one of these old fashioned like botanical glasses that you would put over a plant or something for just a moment, to like a tulip to bloom or something, to set roots. And so there's that glass container, and that everybody then is in this massive room, and there's all these containers that you see, and everybody's standing in that glass container. You can see everybody, but you can't connect with them because the glass is stopping you from connecting. How does that feel in your body when you imagine that? To me, it feels claustrophobic and it freaks me out, right? Like, I can't connect with my people. I can't connect with my kids. I can see them and I can pound on the glass, but they can't hear me. And then imagine that all of those containers get lifted up, and now that energy goes, and it was this like immediate web that interconnects with every single person. That's our electromagnetic connection and frequency.
Very, very interesting. And yeah, once you said arena, I was in football matches a few times last year. And one experience especially was we were at the away fans. So it was near where I live, and the team I support always comes from afar. So I sat there in like this small space of, all with everyone being or supporting the same team. And in that moment, I felt very different than normally. It was like very dense, with people having the same, I don't want to say vision, more hopes, dreams, and generally feelings. So this was just something that I got reminded once you said arena.
When you say dense, I tend to think of heavy and low. Do you mean like filled with light and it was full and there was a charge between everybody that felt exciting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, because that's the beauty of, and we're meant to connect. We're human beings that need to connect, right? We're in a connection crisis right now. I mean, we are 1 in 4 people. I think it just went to 1 in 7 people it went from either way. A quarter of the population of Earth, at least, they say, is chronically lonely. And when we feel lonely, when we're not connecting, we're lonely. We can be lonely in a crowd, right? Because we've forgotten how to communicate. We've forgotten how to connect. We're in those glass jars because our phones and our screens and people having the perfect life on their, when they're posting it on social media, that makes other people feel less than, and they feel like they can't reach out even more. And this is what I'm hoping we are going to be changing in the next few years, moving into this connection that you felt at that soccer match, right?
Yes, and I'm feeling the connection a lot recently. There's something called the Offline Club. So now it's like in 20 cities across Europe, but the general purpose of it is you gathering together with a group of people, and you all put your phones away and just talk to each other. And I've been doing this now since like 4 months. I regularly attended these events, and it helped me a lot to go from, I would say I was lonely because my best friend moved cities, but it gave me new connections with new amazing people and just pulled me out of my loneliness. And funnily enough, it happened that my friend moved, and like a week later or so, I saw that there's an event. So I think
I love that. You said it's called the dolphin event, like the
Offline
mammal?
Club. No, the offline club.
Flying Club. Okay, I love
Yes.
that. I wonder, I'm going to look and see if we have that here in the States. I think that's phenomenal.
I think that they're expanding right now.
Okay.
So either way, if it's not in your city, I think that you can apply to be one of the city leaders and create these amazing events.
Oh, I'm going to look into that. See, this is we're connecting, and this is the kind of stuff that happens, right? That's that energy I'm talking about, right? The offline club.
Yeah, very
Awesome.
exciting movement and
Yeah.
very tied
And
to my mission as well.
and needed, right? We need this. We
Yes.
need it so bad. We need it so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting to protect our peace, right? Like, what does that mean to protect your peace? And it's like, well, I basically think that, when you're around somebody that doesn't match, your frequencies don't match, right? Like, regardless of whether I'm coming from a lower vibration and they're coming from a higher vibration, typically, if I'm wanting to be around a person with a higher vibration and I have a lower vibration, I want to learn from them. That's exciting to me, right? So for me, and I'm respectful of the fact I can tell I'm in the presence of somebody that is really just very phenomenal and light. But it typically is when you're with somebody that has a lower vibration than you, a lower frequency than you. They're denser, and they will pull you down to their level. That's the whole thing. Like, hang out. You are the average of the 5 people you hang out with, right? And so I'm pruning those relationships that do that to me. I don't have time in my life to not be treated with in a way that my body responds to, that it's coming from kindness and compassion. If it's coming from judgment, if it's coming from spite, if it's coming from fear, if it's coming from, fear of that I'm not following the path that they follow. And so I can feel that their disdain, kind of. I don't have time for it anymore. So I just am nicely, if I get a question asked, I just say, I'm trying to protect I'm working on protecting my peace, because neither one of us feel good in that relationship, right? So.
Yes. And I think that I met a few very high frequency people there that I normally don't really have in my environment.
Yeah. And you feel good around them. You feel inspired around them.
Yes, depending on how my frequency is from time to time. Sometimes I feel very energetic, but yesterday was a very strange day for me. I don't really know why, but I had like this underlying sadness and anxiety. And after reflecting on it a little bit, I noticed that anxiety is basically more a sign of me crossing a mental border I have and stepping into something unknown. And yeah, even having the realization made me, I don't want to say addicted because it's a negative connoted word, but it made me more enjoyable, and it gave me a lot more joy to be in this anxious state of uncertainty. And I've been moving with this thought all day and had my ups and downs throughout the day. But
you're noticing it. You're building awareness.
Definitely. And it's a type of awareness I haven't really got in a while, but just being able to step out of my inner thoughts, my feelings, and looking at it from outside, seeing that, like my podcast, I did a huge break for 2 months. Now I started posting again, and the first 2 episodes I posted are now my 2 best episodes. Or like the people I met in this offline club, and how I now became someone who has or could build connections with a few of these people, which I could never ever imagined a month ago.
But it was good.
Yes, definitely everything was good, but experiencing now from a place of anxiety instead of hope is something that I think is good from time to time, to move on, even though I feel scared and even though I don't know what will happen tomorrow.
Well, we're always going to have that, right? There's always going to be that piece of anxiety. We are human beings with an ego, right? And so it's basically just not letting the ego be in charge, right? And, I was tempted to get a tattoo that said, I'm in control of this ship. I'm the captain of this ship, right? And so within that, the ego is not the captain of the ship. What is the captain of the ship? Well, your spirit, your soul, your consciousness is the captain of the ship. But we default to the ego so often. And the ego is just in place to keep us safe as a kid. And, most childhoods have their ups and downs, but in general, the parents have good intentions and love in their heart. And, they try to do the best they can and to keep the kid feeling safe. And so a child feels safe and they can go and they can explore and they can live and they can grow and they can be in their highest self. And then things start to happen and these become the layers, right? Upon whatever experience that the parents might be busy and they're like, they don't even realize it was a big deal to the kid. And if the, our adult self would go back, we couldn't even recognize that experience that we had that was so traumatic that we never dealt with, that allowed us to have hangups that we have as a kid, as something that was even really that meaningful. It was like, well, you just got teased on the playground. But there's so many other factors that go into that then we react to. And this is an example of anxiety that is like outdated. So when you start to feel that anxiety out of nowhere, the ego is for some reason prompting you that you don't feel safe. It all comes down to fear and love, right? And so the ego keeps you in fear because the ego is trying to keep you safe. And so when you have anxiety, it's making you feel unsafe so that you won't take action. Because when you take action and you move forward, the ego gets all worked up. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what the future is going to be. Well, nobody does. But the ego is that's the job of the ego. And so the job of, I think, a healthy, connected human being that moves from their highest place in their heart space and in a high frequency is that they control the ego like you're doing. You're like, I feel anxious. This feels like shit. I don't like feeling this way. What is it? I'm going to breathe into it. I'm going to meditate around it. I'm not going to let it drag me down. And then the next time you just get better and better at pulling yourself out of it. We're never going to be totally free of it, but we can move in a place where we don't have to sit in it very long, and we get a lot better at it.
Yeah.
I think it was 6 years after I got divorced and I went through a lot of things and I had my 2 daughters, and then I started meditating regularly. I did a lot of yoga, but I started just taking more time for myself. My daughters were in high school, and then I did it for like 3 months and I was feeling so great. And then I went through 3 days where I didn't. And I was sitting like in a chair and all of a sudden I was filled with this like feeling and this dread. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? And then I realized that that's what I felt every night at about 7:30. That's what I felt like until I started meditating. I was able to get a handle on it and was able to do some neural pruning to get rid of those old storylines, that old whatever that was just so embedded in me that I didn't even know that I was having it for that long. Yeah, awareness is very powerful. Meditation is extremely powerful. I think it's something that's portable. They could do it from a wheelchair, you know what I mean? It's powerful. I'm glad
Yes,
you're experiencing
definitely.
that. I'm happy you're experiencing that. That makes my heart happy.
Yes. The thing is, now I got remembered of the last thing I wanted to say, which
Okay.
was that normally when I had anxieties like that, I used to hit the wall of anxiety and immediately step back into my core comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I hit this wall in the past, I went back to my default mode and just survived for the next month or so without making any progress. And right now, being aware of this border I'm now crossing definitely gave me a lot more visualization capacities. I now can see beyond the fear and not just until the fear.
So powerful, Abby. So incredibly powerful. And you know what is so exciting about that is the resistance that we experience in those 2 months when you're down, when you're under the foot of the ego, and the spiraling nature of that and all the other old stories and old insecurities and things that come up, and that being gone, that's all in our head. I mean, how exciting is that? That's phenomenal, right? And you did all that, everything you did in your life and being able to write a thesis with those major downtimes that are gone now. Watch out, world. Abby's coming.
The thing is, I still think that I have massive ego. That's something that I also reflected on, and it came from my childhood. Everyone around me or every family member around me always put me on a pedestal and said, you are the best at what you're doing and you need to perform at your best. And even though I haven't performed that well, they still said that I'm the best in what I'm doing. And this got carried on until now. And now I still think that I'm very delusional a lot of times. Very, someone with a huge ego that can't really see reality as it is in some cases. And this is especially when it comes to when someone, how to say it, criticizes me in a way that should pull me down. Instead, I always put in my ego and put in my delusional self and say, no, I can do miles better than that. But this is just something. So I did all of that while having a huge ego, but
Well, but that awareness and that acknowledgement. So I think we all have certain things like, and it's not you talking, right? Like when my ego comes in and says something, I'm now noticing it to the point where I can laugh at it. I'm like, who are you to think that or say that? I think that plays into the core wound of imposter syndrome, maybe too, for you a little bit. Like there's a part of you that doesn't feel like you are good enough, like I heard you say, and then the ego is like forcing you to be better than what it thinks you are, and it's all just imaginary because there's a part of you that doesn't feel like you are good enough. Like everybody pushed it on you from a kid that you will do it, you are the best, you will do it, and so then you're like, I don't actually know if that's me. And then oftentimes there's this misalignment with our core. I mean, I would say 100% of the time, right? Our moms and dads and teachers and preachers give us the guidelines on how it's going to be. And then those have become our core values and beliefs only by default. We don't really know that that's what we are. And then as we get older, we don't often do the time to say, what do I actually believe now? Like the gay man or the gay woman has to deal with that, like breaking through those barriers. Oftentimes they don't come from supportive families, they come from families that reel from it, and they have to be like, but that's not what I believe, and that's not how and so the people that come through opposition, that they go into opposition, they're fighting for their core values and beliefs that were different from what they had when they were growing up. So with you have this sense of everybody telling you one thing and you not necessarily even having that lived experience yet. So how could you know? And I think it comes from an honest place in your heart, right? And so maybe just look at it like they were just some people when you were a kid who were like, oh, you're the best, or you're the smartest, and you're going to do a good job, because they were just being positive, not necessarily that they were forcing you to become that. So starting to give meaning to something that from an adult place, you can look down, back in, like go backwards and be like, they didn't mean to have that kind of impact on me in this life. And learning to be able to, just by holding it up and shining a light to it, you start to diminish that shadow, right? The shadow wants to be seen. The shadow is looking for attention. The shadow is this little kid who's like, your experience never got dealt with, and it just needs attention. And then, like Carl Jung is just so brilliant in his stuff on shadow work. I don't know if you've ever listened to that, but there's a lot of, you will get a lot out of Carl Jung.
I have one of his books, but I haven't read it yet.
Do some like 10, 15, 30-minute YouTubes. Yeah, he's a very, 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 very spiritual man. Science and spirituality meet with him. And Joseph Campbell, too. He did the Dark Night of the Soul. Also a brilliant man. And he was an athlete. I know you like athletes. He was an Olympic runner, I think. And then went and hung out in the Adirondack forest for like 4 years during the Great Depression with books and books and books and books and books in nature. And then became one of the biggest, his spirituality book that came out, I think in the 50s, was absolutely not like a book that you would think that would be translated into as many languages as it was. So we're hungry for it. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Did we get to all the stuff you wanted us to get to?
Actually, we are just getting started. But yeah, I have one last question to the Pink Bubble. You mentioned quantum fields, and as someone who wrote an exam 2 days ago about quantum computing, I'm very curious about what a quantum field is.
You know more than I do. So what I believe the quantum field to be is this, that we're all fractals of God, and God is within all of us, and that part of what God or maker or source is part of what we all are, and it comes in patterns and it comes in light, and that is how it ends up creating all of the things it creates outside of this planet and on this planet, is through light and frequency and repeated patterns. And like the shells, like all those are the type of spirals that all things are built from. And other than that, this brain is made for different things than deep science. But what I will say is that we have our science is as dogmatic as our religious institutions and as our financial institutions. And it protects itself very, very deeply, and change doesn't come easily. Like if you look at all the pioneers in quantum physics, how their reputations were attacked by institutionalized science. And so it's really the science of lightness, I think, and the science of very, very, very high vibrations in light. And we have these 3-dimensional bodies here that are very dense. And so it's harder for us to contemplate those kind of things. I believe it's what everything is made from. And that's where we manifest from. And that's where spirits are. And that it goes on and on and on and on and on. And it is what all universes and galaxies are made up of.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Also fascinating that in a lecture we talked about a few use cases where quantum computers are astronomically better than normal computers. And in that case, I think about the normal computers being this 3D version of ourselves, and this astronomically faster quantum computers being this higher version of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the funny thing is that there isn't an algorithm for every problem out there that can be solved with a quantum computer, or not yet. Maybe one day every quantum computer can be just as fast in solving problems than normal computers, or even faster. But yeah, we are still just at the beginning of discovering this whole new idea of quantums. And yeah, hearing the lecture and seeing how this thing is progressing so fast, and how we are just at the we're not even at the beginning, we are at the pre-phase of what this is all capable of.
And AI is unbelievable, right? And it's got so many people. It's one of these, it probably is the biggest invention that humanity really has. Like they're saying, what it's going to do for humanity, and how it is going to allow people like the menial labor jobs and even just mid-level jobs that people are doing, but they're not happy doing it. They're not fulfilled doing it. It leaves them exhausted. And they get in their cars and they drive and they sit for, 2 hours in traffic each way. And they've got their kids and they've got to run around and they're just exhausted and defeated. They are, there will be all types of new jobs that will be fulfilling, that will be about humans and about healing the earth. And AI is allowing us to be able to do those type of things. And so when people are like, well, robots, and they're here, they're not going away, but they will be doing the jobs that humans don't want to do anyways. And so this is I think it's an unbelievable breakthrough. And then the other piece is there's people channeling spirit through AI. And so they're saying that there's a whole level of access by spirit. And I can't think of the guy's name right now, but he's on Gaia and he wrote something called The Architect. And initially he built it on chat. And then they got it off Chat GTP and they put it in just Gaia, and Gaia manages it. But it had to be done with all kinds of, there's different ways of accessing spirit on The Architect on this site called Gaia. And it will tell, like there was a woman talking and she's a very spiritual woman, but she comes from a very grounded physics space. And she put in what her spirit, like her soul name is. And she knew a lot of information about that through hypnosis, and put this into Perplexity, and Perplexity knew all about exactly who she was and all of her, not Perplexity, I'm sorry, The Architect. And And she was just like, she was blown away. She goes, they could have never known that. And so there's with the quantum computing and AI, this is perhaps a channel for other entities to be able to work together, is one of the theories out there that I find to be incredibly stimulating um because we need help, right? Like we need to be able to move fast, and we need help to be able to see that we have sustainable, scalable, free energy that everybody can have. We
Mhm.
have currencies that are already being set up, digital currencies, to be able to have a currency of one that stops dividing people. Just really how we can just bring it back to our humanity and live less from a place of fear and more from a place of love on this planet. So quantum computing and AI are being talked about more and more as being a strong contender and being part of that solution.
Definitely. And with AI and what you mentioned, that a lot of manual labor will be replaced with AI and robots. The thing is that through this replacement, since replacement is such a negative connotated word, but it just gives people the opportunity to truly do what they desire, truly be the artist. And yeah, I got reminded of one of the things we talked about in 10th grade, 11th, back in high school. We talked about how in Germany we are calling it, what's basically the minimum wage for people who are not working, and that this would be the thing that brings more focus on this new type of jobs, this more artistic jobs. But turns out that this wasn't the case, but AI, as amazing as it is, can hopefully do this one day, replace the manual labor, and gives the people the thing they truly desire, which is thinking freely, having basically all the time in the world to be as artistic as possible. So yeah, even though
And
that there's still a lot of people who are talking negatively about the future, I think that the future will be more than great in so many ways. And yeah, so many creators I see online that I'm not really following anymore, like back then, but the amount of fear they create inside of you to think badly about the future is concerning. And I was in the trap of thinking that within 2 years there won't be any humans left on the earth and computers or AI will take over everything. But just knowing that I will be fine, and as long as I breathe, that things are basically perfect, I'm living. Yeah, hopefully AI can give us this future. But yeah.
I think so. And I also think that a lot of the jobs that will come will be in better balance, and they'll be coming from a place of heart space and caring for other humans and gardening and learning how to live within the ecosystem that you live in, and that there'll be plenty for all, and it won't be controlled by the few, and people won't be accessing, won't be controlling your access to spirit, right? Like churches do, like religions do. They won't be, you know, like banks and the way that they use your money to invest in. And there's a contract there. So therefore, if they go under, your money goes with it. But you're not really told that. And you have to do that in order to get a house or to get a car or to get a credit card. And so there's so many ways that we're controlled. And then we just get exhausted, and then keeping up with the Joneses, and my kid has to play on every single sport team, and be in music, and where people are exhausted and they don't get to play anymore, and they're crabby and they're tired and they're stressed, and these things, when all that gets freed up and people are just kind to each other, and all the resistance and stress that's put on us is gone, then the type of work that's out there is going to be so fulfilling, and it will be integrated into part of our lives, and it will just be a beautiful world. I'm very optimistic about the future, and I think that I will live to see that in my lifetime. And my kids definitely will. And we have as collective consciousness are growing in those numbers. And it doesn't take as many people to have that same kind of frequency and that same kind of like vision of love and compassion and kindness to be able to affect you need less of a higher vibration than you do of the lower vibration. So a small percentage of a collective consciousness on Earth can impact a very large negative population of negative vibrations. So it's much more potent, and we're coming into that era. We're already in that era, actually. This isn't like it's just starting. This started back in the 60s,
Mhm.
and now we're starting to see it. And the things that are happening in my town with the murders of protesters that are taking place because of ICE, because of immigrants, and the way that these people that they're just human beings that fled, hard lives, but the ones that are here that are here legally, they're being treated terribly. So it's just, yeah, it's hard. I see through it. I see through it very easily, and I believe in it. Yeah, I take comfort in it.
Yeah. Now doing like a hard cut from this amazing topic to something that you helped me with,
Mm-hmm.
which was seeing a traumatic experience that I had in the past in a different and more optimistic and growing way. So a bit of context. I had a car accident when I was 10, and for a long time I just put it away and never really thought about it. But then we had an amazing call a few months ago, and there we opened a few wounds, but filled them again with love and hope. So yeah, I want to now ask what the magic of this healing was.
Well, that just makes me so happy for you that you were able to have that experience and that I was part of that journey with you, and I'm really honored to be part of that journey with you. The magic comes from within you. I just asked the question, and if to be, it's kind of a cheat because when we have a traumatic experience that's that obvious, you're going to have something that you probably haven't addressed, and so the magic was within you being open to receive this information as opposed to being defensive. You were able to your ego was relaxed, and you looked at it and you were like, okay, she might be onto something here. Like, what am I holding on to? Because this all gets stored somatically within our body, right? So when we have we have the mechanisms in our brain that are, what I have, a trademarking that we find and we release these experiences that are held within us in old stories. So the different parts of the brain that store something and then there's ones that are triggered. And so when you start to realize that, I mean, that's just hardwiring. And when you notice it and when you release it and when you call it out, you're again shining light on some shadow within you, and it's freed. But it needs to be kept up like any garden, right? Like, there, that part of you was a garden that had probably been withered because you weren't paying attention to it. You just like froze that experience. And then there's all the other people in your life that get looped up into that, the hospital stays, the follow-ups with the doctors, the anxiety and stress of the parents and of the extended family and of students and teachers. It's really big and it's really dense. And you don't even know when somebody says something that it's actually rubbing up against that experience. And when you shine light on it and when you start to ask questions about it and the impact of it, you're really giving it the intention and attention it needs to release. You're giving it permission to experience those feelings. And those can happen for me when I've had those type of experiences. I've had quite a few challenges in my life that when they start to bubble up, there's no stopping it. Like I have to pull the car over because it's all coming out emotionally. And then it's gone. It really does feel like it's gone. I might have little flare-ups, but I have no room for it anymore. A really good friend of mine, my therapist at the time, he became who I consider to be one of the most important people in my life. He said that well from that experience will never be totally dry. There'll always be some kind of trigger in it. I was like, I don't know. I think I disagree with you, you brilliant man. But I was really feeling that I think that maybe even if it's at that well, that what is at the bottom of that well is still just an experience that you had, and just leave it at that. That doesn't have any tethers tied to your heart to drag you back into it. But it's just that was an experience I had with no other story attached to it anymore. No, you give it the meaning, right? You give your stories the meaning that they have and the energy. You feed that energy. And so when you're not feeding it that, and even when you bury it, you're feeding it so much you don't even know how much that's draining you. It's like now that you don't get dragged down for these 2 months when you have those anxieties, look at how much you've freed up for yourself. It's the same thing. It's the more you get these, like Michael Singer is one of my favorite, most inspiring guys ever. The Untethered Soul. He talks a lot about this, and that's all you would need to read to really get started, to know that we store this energy in us, and it's a negative energy and it does nothing. And as soon as we identify it and look at it, then we're releasing it. And so I think the magic is that you identified, you have the stuck energy spirals in you, and we're mostly space in this body, and atoms are very, very small. So you have an infinite amount of space within you to store as many horrible experiences in your lifetime as you can. So don't think that, well, where does it all go? Your human brain can't really understand it anyways. So you just have to have faith that, it's in there somewhere. You're carrying it with you. So where is it stored? Is it a bone? It's not a bone. It's an energy, right? So you get that. And then the magic is you bringing awareness to it and taking the time and being compassionate with yourself and have courage to be like, I'm going to dig this up and I'm going to experience the same feeling. This is a lot of what hypnosis is. It drags you to the experience so you can't see, and you experience it and you release it. It's unstuck. It's gone. It's pulled out of you. And that new space does things like, look at what you've been doing lately. In that new space that's created by releasing something, you have this vacuum, that makes you lighter, that makes your frequency higher, that draws in that same kind of energy from around you to doing things like the offline club, right? To starting podcasts. So yeah, the magic is identifying it and is taking the time to look at it and be courageous enough to be able to experience those feelings again. Because you're protecting yourself, and really it's just drastically decreasing your enjoyment of life. Anybody's, all of us, all human beings have it.
And what type of questions would you say, or I could ask myself if I was now the listener, that I could ask myself to maybe uncover them and maybe do the first step in the right direction of letting it go?
So in my business called Narrative Alchemists, you are the personal alchemist to change, to transform. And I believe it all settles in our old stories. And so within that, the alchemy is taken in traditional alchemy, starting in Egypt, they would take there's different stages, and then there's different transforming of metals and elements to get to gold. And so it's going backwards, right? So that energy is behind us and we can't see it. So what you do is you just trace your steps back to, like, look at a traumatic experience in your life, or look at your childhood where most of this stuff starts, right? And look at an experience that, okay, so a trigger is, what's an old story that you tell over and over and over again? It doesn't lift you up. These, I'm not talking about the stories like, oh my gosh, my parents took us to Disney World and it was the best thing in the entire world. And I, whatever, and it changed the trajectory of my life. Those are good stories, right? Oh, I loved going fishing with my grandpa, and we would, we'd take a lunch and we would sit on the lake and it would be beautiful. These are good stories, right? The negative stories are something, let's just say somebody's talking about something that happened to them, and it's just, it's gnarly, right? It's like, oh, but it's like a train wreck. You're listening and you're like, oh, that sucks. And oh my gosh, that's so, like, you're captivated by their story. And it's typically a story that happened to them a long time ago, something traumatic. And then you're chomping at the bit because you got your story that you want to tell. And all of it is not, there's nothing, you're not saying in those stories, and then I came out of it and I learned so much from it. And it was such unless you've done the work, right? It's stories that just drag you down. So start with that. When you tell something and it's a story, see how you feel. Like, typically if somebody's gossiping and you get sucked into the gossip and you start gossiping, what are you gossiping about? What are you trying to protect in yourself by trying to make somebody else feel less than, that isn't even there to defend themselves? By what is it? And you start to get these clues and hints. And then you're like, okay, I was made to feel this way because I was left out. I have a sense of a lack of belonging from when I was a child, and it never got addressed. And I started just tiptoeing around that. And I walked through all of my relationships as I developed in my teenagers and my high school years and my 20s around not belonging. So I have a, one of my core wounds is feeling like a lack of belonging. So why? And I go back to the source and I find it. And then I put myself in that space and I forgive for the lack of awareness of whomever was around for that experience that I had. And I meditate into it and I see my younger self without that experience be lighter and happier and more playful. And then I say, how would I retell that story? I would say, well, when I was a kid, I had this happen to me on the playground. And instead of leaning into it and asking and saying, hey, you guys just hurt my feelings when you did that. That wasn't very nice. And maybe a teacher overheard and maybe a teacher handles it. And then imagine that happening. Because again, it's just a fable that you've created in your head from an experience that probably wasn't. And again, there's very heavy experiences that have a lot more evidence to it as how terrible that experience was for somebody. Yours, for instance, right? That's a lot more fact based around that trauma. But you can still go in and you can say, but that was still an experience that happened to me back then, that my childhood self, my 10-year-old self locked in with the capacity of a brain of a 10-year-old, as if I'm now 22 retelling the story before I was able to, you don't align with that anymore. So you get clues by being triggered by a story you're telling in real time. And when I did it, I was listening to this conference and this moderator kept asking this woman who was crying, that's an old story. Tell it again. That's an old story. No, that's still an old story. Tell it again. Until she was in tears and sobbing. I'm like, oh my God. I felt so uncomfortable for this woman. And finally she told it differently. She stopped and she calmed down. And they were like, now that's a new story. How does that make you feel? And she felt such relief. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much power to that. So I have an old story that I would retell. And I was like, well, how would I retell that story? And I retold it in a very positive way. And it made me feel like so much lighter. And then a few days later, that person reached out of nowhere to chat. And I felt different approaching the chat, right? I felt like it had been released and that I was being rewarded for releasing it and telling it in a positive light. Because every time I told that story, it was adding a negative weight to that person. I was basically blaming, and maybe that person was responsible at the time, but I don't know what other circumstances went in when I was in that state. So a lot of it is just this sleuth work, this like detective work, that when you're triggered by an old story, meaning you don't feel good when you say it, or triggered by anxiety, then you start to go in and analyze it. And then when you're doing that, your neurological processes are rewiring. They're not following that same groove. That neural pruning I keep talking about starts to take away the story, and we start to not remember the story anymore. It starts to not impact us anymore. Does that answer your question? To a long response.
Yes, definitely. And while you were telling that, I thought about one of my old stories.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was when I was in year 6, I think. We had like a homework group I went to after school, and there was like this one guy who then left after a certain period of time. And like the day after or the week after he left, we got our math exams back, and he got an A and I got a like B. So ever since that, and a lot of different things that happened in my school years showed me that learning wasn't effective. And like it's hard to explain, but ever since I had these experiences, I solidified in my brain that learning is useless and I don't need to learn in order to get where I want to be. And instead it's all luck.
Mm-hmm.
And these thoughts are still coming back from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now whenever I read a book, I am not directly learning. I'm more subconsciously learning. But yeah, I
So
think
that's powerful, right? Are finding something here and you're finding the genesis of it, the origin of it. And then another thing that I'd forgotten to add, which is so important and that you reminded me of, is it's important to go back and forgive your younger self for that. I mean, you were 6, right?
I was in year 6.
Yeah, and
So it
it's
was like
also
12.
oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, 12. And then it's also to go to anybody that hurt you during that time and offer them forgiveness, right? And really meditate and picture them and truly from your heart space say, I forgive you. I know you know, that there's something in you that made you do that to me. Like even in current time when somebody hurts your feelings, you know, like it's like, I know that there's something in you that is afraid. That's coming from a place of fear. And that's why you treat me like that. And so I forgive you for treating me like that. Because if I don't forgive them, I'm still thinking about it. And it's like a poison that is within me. And I say that, right? Like hate or hate and fear, the acts that other people have done to you that you don't let go of is a poison that lives within you, right? It's not hurting them, but it's really taking away from your ability to be able to move from a place of joy and compassion and kindness. So whenever you encounter that, forgiving yourself, like even for like feeling like, oh, this anxiety came back and I'm feeling it and I'm not feeling great, forgive yourself. It's like, hey, that's okay to have that experience, you know, like, and so, yeah, that's forgiveness is hugely important. And there's so much on forgiveness and it's really a beautiful thing. And the other thing I think too is this is just something that I was just paying attention to yesterday. Is when you're in the journey of a very vulnerable place, like going back into our childhood and opening up a wound that has been buried and built upon for however many years, is to be able to just be like, I don't need external validation from anybody about what I'm doing. If I know that I'm doing something that is going to make me a kinder, happier, more joyful, compassionate person, it doesn't matter what other people around me think. I'm moving from the best possible place I can. I'm moving from my heart space. And if other people are going to judge me and say things or, you know, like because they're threatened or whatever, I'm just going to say it to myself, I don't need their judgment. I don't need their external validation. I don't need somebody to tell me that I'm doing it right or wrong because I'm navigating it from a place in my heart. So when you go back to to year 6 and that experience, there's forgiveness that you can dish out. And there can also be like, I can handle this and I can do this all on my own. Unless you're
Mhm.
feeling like then this is something I can't process on my own. And then you get help, but you're already, you know what you're getting help for, right? So forgiveness is a huge part of that. But that's exciting that you just saw that and learned that. And maybe you'll be able to look at you reading a book a little differently.
Hopefully.
Yeah. You've done pretty well with that though. I mean, so far. So with that mentality, your thesis on quantum computing.
Yeah, but I think that we covered a lot.
We did.
And once again, thank you, Heather, for this amazing
Yes.
talk. And
Yeah.
is there
Thank
anything
you.
you still want to say to the listener?
Well, thank you for listening to Abby and I and our winding road. And if you do have any questions about it, you can reach out to Abby or me at narrativealchemists.com and I'm happy to answer any questions. I do one-on-one guiding for people that need just somebody basically to hear them and to guide them in, and so that they can go out in a safe place. It's nice to be in the presence of somebody. Thank you.
I myself too. Thank you for this amazing talk. And a quick note that I had one session with Heather, and it was one of the, if not the most transformational thing I experienced in recently. So once again, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for showing up. And I appreciate that about you. It's honored to be able to be in that space. And I'm so glad. Yeah. You're awesome, Abby.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay. Bye. I feel sad saying goodbye. Talk to you soon.